Look, I've spent a lot of time down in these archives, and when you sit in the dark long enough, reading the official municipal records of the past, you stop looking at them as history lessons. You really do. You start seeing them for what they actually are. They're testimonies. They are the panicked, unresolved first-hand accounts of people who saw something completely break the rules of reality, and they just never recovered from it. I'm putting these slides together not to teach you anything, but to show you exactly what they wrote down. Every single fact you're about to see is real. Every source is documented. The past isn't dead. It's happening right now, in ink, right here on these pages.
What we're looking at tonight are 3 events spanning 3 entirely different centuries. And the horror in these documents, it isn't loud, it's quiet. The true terror here is that the official records simply state the impossible facts and then they move on. They don't offer an explanation because they didn't have one. They just recorded what happened. We're going to read their exact words. I just want you to listen to them.
Record number 1. Strasbourg, 1518. The Dancing Plague. I was a clerk for the Strasbourg City Council in the summer of 1518. What I'm telling you is contained in documents I transcribed myself. Her name was Frau Trophia. On the 14th of July, she walked out of her home on the Rue du Foulon and just began to dance in the street. There was no music. There were no other dancers. She danced for 6 days straight before the council even became aware of it. By that point, 34 citizens had joined her. By August, 400 people were dancing. And let me be very clear about what 400 people dancing looks like when it's been happening for weeks. Their feet were bleeding right through their shoes. Some had lost their shoes entirely and were just dancing on bare stone. I walked through the market square on a Tuesday morning in mid-August to deliver documents to the Guildhall, and the smell of the square hit me before I even turned the corner. The sound of bare, bleeding feet slapping against the cobblestones, it was everywhere. They weren't performing, they weren't celebrating.
Some of them were weeping while they danced. I actually spoke with one man, a cartwright named Heinrich. He'd been dancing for 11 days. His wife was standing right at the edge of the square. She told me she had tried to hold him, just to stop his body, and he had screamed as if she'd cut him. His feet had bled and dried and bled again. The dried blood was literally fused with the wool of his stockings. He looked right at me while we spoke. He kept dancing the entire time he said it. He said, "I know what I am doing. I cannot stop doing it." The body was present, the will was absent. Something else was using him. There's one detail that doesn't appear in any of the official medical summaries. I know it because I was standing right there. On the 19th of August, a woman who had been dancing for 18 days fell, and not from exhaustion. She simply stopped. She stood in the middle of the square, surrounded by 400 people who were still moving, and she was perfectly still. She walked over to the edge of the square, she sat down. I went to her and asked what had happened. She said, "It let me go."
She told me it had been holding her, and now it was finished with her. I wrote this down in my personal notes, but I didn't include it in the official record. I think I left it out because I just didn't know what category to put it in. The forms we used had spaces for cause, symptoms, and resolution. "It let me go" doesn't fit in any of those spaces. In September, the dancing just ceased, as suddenly as it had started.
Record number 2. Hamelin, 1284. The Vanishing Children.
I was the town registrar of Hamelin in the summer of 1284. I'm the one who recorded the first official account, the morning of June 26th. It was perfectly ordinary. I know this because I recorded the morning's business myself, a dispute about a miller's grain weight, a request for road repair. These entries are in the exact same hand, the exact same ink, the exact same register as what I wrote later that evening. After midday, 130 children walked out of the town. None of them came back. The disappearance is recorded right there in the town's official deeds, the Lüneburg manuscript. The exact words read, 130 born in Hamelin were seduced and lost. Several witnesses saw them leave. Some said they were following a figure. One mother ran after them. She came back alone. She said she had called her daughter's name. She said her daughter turned to look at her. And then her daughter simply kept walking.
I went out to the Koppenhill myself with 2 of the town guards. The road leading up from the town was thick with dust from the dry summer. We tracked the marks of a massive number of small feet. The marks led up the road. They did not come back down. The tracks ended in a field on the eastern slope. They didn't end at a cave or a building or a cliff. They ended in a circle, roughly 10 feet across, right in the middle of an open field with absolutely nothing to explain the cessation. No hole, no structure, no break in the earth whatsoever.
The ground was just disturbed as if many small feet had been standing in one single place. And then, vanished into thin air.
There were 2 children who didn't follow. One was deaf. The other was a lame 8-year-old child who physically couldn't keep up. He was found at the edge of town. I sat with him. I asked him where all the other children were going. He said they were going to the music that was calling them. And then he began to cry. He said I wanted to go too. He was weeping because his legs couldn't carry him to whatever had taken the others.
The search lasted for 3 weeks. No bones, no clothing, nothing was ever found. The official record of the town of Hamelin for the year 1284 ends the entry for June 26th like this: "On this day, our children departed." The very next entry, for June 27th, is about a fence dispute. The street near where they were last seen was renamed, and music was permanently banned there out of respect. A town doesn't ban music on a street because of a fairy tale. They just noted the loss, and they moved on.
Record number 3, Saxony. Undated. The Rat King. I'm a miller. I've worked with green and stone and the rats that live between them for 30 years. I know what rats look like, but what I found in the wall cavity of my mill wasn't anything I had a name for. I had broken open the plaster to repair a beam, expecting rot. What I found instead was a dark cavity that had been packed and sealed from the inside. A single rat gnaws. A single rat doesn't pack plaster. I stopped counting at 14. Inside that dark hollow, they were alive. Their tails were bound together, not tied, not tangled, fused, as if they'd grown that way, as if they had always been one single thing with many bodies. When one pulled left, they all pulled left. I exposed them to the light of the mill, and they went still, all of them at once, not in sequence, simultaneously.
I backed away from the wall. When I finally went back, they were in the exact same position, all of them watching me. Not each rat watching me with its own attention. The group was watching me with one attention. They weren't 14 individual creatures sharing a space. They were looking at me as one creature, with 14 bodies.
I went straight to the village priest. He came out and looked at it in the shadows. He said, "Bury it, burn the ground. Do not tell anyone what you found." I asked him why. He told me that the Rat King is a harbinger. He said every time one of these is found, the dying comes. And he was right. Every recorded discovery of this phenomenon in our chronicles was immediately followed by pestilence.
I burned it, just like the priest told me to. Within the month, my wife was sick, then my son, then the next village over. I didn't get sick. The priest died in the 3rd week of the outbreak. Years later, I passed by my mill. The mill still stands, but as I approached the door, my body physically refused to let me enter. I couldn't explain it. I just stood there, and I noticed the eastern wall had been replastered by someone else.
3 events, 3 different centuries, 3 different countries, 3 official records that document the impossible in full. You know what strikes me sitting here reading these accounts together in this dark archive isn't the events themselves. It's the official response to the events. In each case, the authorities, the city councils, the town registrars, the physicians, they did exactly what authorities do. They investigated, they filed reports, they applied whatever frameworks they had available to them.
And then, the records just move on. The clerk in Strasbourg didn't write "it let me go" because there was no box for it on his form. The registrar in Hamelin recorded "our children departed" and then immediately started writing about a fence. The priest told the miller to bury the mass of fused rats, and then the priest died. The horror isn't in the events. The horror is in the records. Because these horrors couldn't be categorized, the clerks just proceeded to the next item of municipal business as if nothing had happened at all.
The dancing stopped. The children never returned. The plague came. And the documents contain this chilling, implicit acknowledgement that absolutely nothing was ever explained, as if the only thing left to do, when confronted with something completely impossible, is to just write the next sentence. What would you have written next?